They poisoned 3,000 fish in my lake. 4 hours later, their kids were drinking the same water. Sunday morning, my 3-acre paradise turned into a chemical wasteland. Foam thick as wedding cake frosting. Bass I'd raised for 5 years floating belly up. That sharp ammonia smell that burns your nose hairs. You know the one. The HOA president, Dolores, actually stood there watching my fish die and said, "Maybe now you'll learn to respect authority." She didn't know her $1 million house gets water from my lake. Neither did the 47 other homes in her precious HOA. What happened next cost them $400,000, 3 federal arrests, and made me the hero of every HOA victim in America. This is the story of how I legally destroyed an entire HOA board using their own stupidity against them. Where are you watching from? Comment below if your HOA deserves this same treatment. Trust me, you'll want to take notes. Name's Charlie Henley, Mac to anyone who matters, 52, retired Navy engineer, and owner of the 12 acres that would destroy an entire HOA. See, when Uncle Roy left me this Tennessee paradise with its 3-acre lake, he forgot to mention one tiny detail. The psychopaths next door had been stealing water from it for 20 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My wife Beth runs the county library, sweet as peach pie until you cross her. Then she becomes the NSA, FBI, and IRS rolled into one librarian-shaped vengeance machine. Our daughter Jessa, environmental science major who came home that summer obsessed with water contamination. Kid could spot pH imbalance from 50 yards. Funny how God prepares you for war. The property was perfect. 3-acre spring-fed lake Uncle Roy dug in '78 with a borrowed excavator in spite for the county commissioner who said he couldn't. 8-pound bass that fought like Navy SEALs. Every morning, mist rising off the water like ghosts while herons picked off bluegill in the shallows. Paradise. Willow Creek Estates squatted next door. 48 houses built on what used to be decent farmland. Back in the 90s, their wells ran dry every August. Uncle Roy, being too nice for his own good, let them tap the lake for emergencies. Handshake deal. No papers. The kind of mistake that costs you everything. Now, let me paint you a picture of the HOA board, or as I call them, the 4 horsemen of the suburban apocalypse. Dolores Whitmore, president. 67, drove a white Escalade she parked like Helen Keller. Former realtor who'd sell her mother's soul for a commission. Her perfume arrived 5 minutes before she did. Imagine if funeral flowers mated with industrial cleanser. Always wore pearls, even to inspect septic tanks. The woman measured grass with a ruler and once fined someone for a doormat that was too welcoming. Jerry Stansfield, vice president, 71, lived on his golf cart like it was life support. Those brake pads squeaked like tortured mice. You'd hear him coming from Jupiter. Quoted bylaws he'd never read, rules he invented on the spot. Man actually reported someone for having aggressively happy garden gnomes. Brenda Michael Matthews, treasurer, 45, running 3 MLM scams simultaneously. Filmed everything for her entrepreneur journey. I'm talking bathroom breaks. Hey boss babes, today we're destroying a neighbor's life. Swipe up for my essential oil blend. Turned every confrontation into content. Sold overpriced leggings to fund her Botox addiction. Kyle Dobbs, enforcement officer, 38, failed cop wannabe who wore tactical gear to get the mail. 3 police academy rejections hadn't dimmed his enthusiasm for authoritarianism. Kept his citation pad in a quick-draw holster. The man got visibly excited writing violations. It was disturbing. 3 weeks in, I noticed neighborhood kids fishing off my dock. Instead of chasing them off like Dolores would, I taught them catch and release. Proper base handling, barbless hooks, those kids' smiles when they landed their first fish, worth more than gold. I even fixed their raggedy rope swing, added a tire. What's a lake for if not kids laughing on summer afternoons? That Tuesday, Dolores arrived with Kyle. Official cease and desist letter. Unauthorized commercial fishing operation. It's kids fishing, I said. Teaching constitutes instruction. Instruction requires permits. $500. Her snake smile could freeze hell. Unless you join the HOA, we could make arrangements. I'm not in your jurisdiction. We have ways of dealing with difficult neighbors, Mr. Henley. Fresh-cut grass mixed with her toxic perfume cloud. Kyle's hand hovering over his citation pad like Wyatt Earp. That night, Beth started a file labeled evidence. Jessa began testing water quality for fun. The war was about to begin. The first shot came at 6 a.m. on a Thursday. County inspector at my door, clipboard in hand, looking apologetic. Mr. Henley, we received a complaint about unsafe structures near your lake. I need to inspect your dock. Anonymous complaint, my ass. We both knew exactly who called it in. My floating dock had been there since Uncle Roy built it in '87. The inspector walked it 3 times, measuring everything, checking posts. The morning breeze kept flipping his clipboard pages. Sounded like cards shuffling at a poker game where I was about to get fleeced. Someone really wants you gone, he finally said. This dock is technically 18 inches too close to the property line according to current setback rules. Current rules. What about when it was built? He smiled like a funeral director. You got permits from '87. Thank God Uncle Roy kept everything. Every receipt, every permit, every napkin he ever scrawled on. Beth and I tore through his metal filing cabinets, beasts from the '60s that smelled like rust and forgotten arguments. 6 hours later, bingo, building permit, stamped, signed, dated March 1987. Grandfather clause protected. The inspector held that paper like he'd found the Holy Grail. Changes everything. You're completely legal. He leaned in close. But whoever's after you isn't playing games. Watch your back. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. The county records office sits in the basement of a building that time forgot. Mabel, the clerk who'd been there since Nixon was president, knew exactly what I needed. Another HOA dispute? She asked, already pulling files. Turns out, I'd stumbled onto something beautiful. Back in my Navy days, we had a saying, every enemy has a weakness, you just need the right intel. HOAs, they have to file their exact boundaries with the county. It's public record. Most people never check. Big mistake. Willow Creek Estates had gotten greedy. Their filed boundary was 300 feet smaller than what they claimed. Even better, that fence they were so proud of, it sat 18 inches onto my property. They'd been trespassing for 2 decades. I filed a formal survey request that afternoon, posted the legal notice on their bulletin board, right between hot yoga and Brenda's essential oil pyramid scheme. Took photos with timestamps. In the military, we called it CYA, cover your ass. Civilian life isn't much different. The retaliation came at 3 a.m. Sunday. My dog went ballistic. Outside, someone had dumped 2 truckloads of construction debris blocking my gate. Broken drywall, rusty nails sticking out like a tetanus garden, concrete chunks the size of watermelons, could have killed someone driving into it in the dark. But here's the beautiful thing about paranoia. Sometimes it saves you. I'd installed trail cameras the week before. Crystal clear footage. Kyle's lifted F-150, license plate, tough guy. I'm not kidding. Him in his ridiculous tactical vest throwing garbage like he was storming Normandy. Even caught him flipping off my house when he finished. Classy. Sheriff's deputy showed up, looked at the mess, watched my footage, shrugged. Civil matter, Mr. Henley. You'll have to sue. 2 tons of hazardous waste blocking emergency vehicle access is civil. He actually looked embarrassed. Between you and me, Dolores's cousin is the sheriff. Document everything, but handle this carefully. That's when the universe sent me a gift wrapped in a college sophomore. Jessa's roommate Emma was home for summer break. My mom's an environmental lawyer, she mentioned over dinner. Not just any lawyer, the kind that made DuPont executives lose sleep. She'd love to look at your situation. Professional courtesy. It's just harassment, I said. What could they possibly do to water? I'd learned to regret those words. The neighbors started approaching me quietly. 3 separate visits, all nervous, all grateful someone was standing up. The Richfields, married 43 years, had been fined $1,000 because their granddaughter drew hopscotch squares on their own driveway. Another couple got cited for a bird feeder that attracted unauthorized wildlife. Dolores ended careers, Mr. Richfield warned, his voice dropping. The last guy who fought her? She made some calls, spread rumors about embezzlement. Complete lies, but mudsticks. Man had to move to Arkansas to find work. Tennessee's a one-party consent state. Learned that from a paralegal friend years ago. Means you can record any conversation you're part of. So I started recording everything. Phone in my pocket, app running. Every interaction became evidence. Wednesday afternoon, Jerry was chatting up a pest control driver for 20 minutes. Long conversation for pest control. Cash changed hands. I watched through binoculars. Truck had Pest Pro 1 painted on the side. Thursday, Beth noticed the water looked off. Slight foam near the shore, barely visible. Jessa tested it immediately. Still normal, but she started taking daily samples anyway. Building a baseline, she said. Smart kid saw the storm coming before I did. 5 a.m. Friday morning, I knew something was wrong before I even opened my eyes. The smell hit first, sharp, chemical, like a pool supply store had exploded. Then the silence. No birds, no frogs, nothing. I ran to the lake in my boxers and bare feet. The entire surface was covered in yellow-green foam 3 inches thick. It looked like someone had dumped a truck of toxic whipped cream across my paradise. Fish were already surfacing, bass gasping, smaller bluegill floating dead. My biggest bass, the one I'd named General after catching and releasing him 6 times, was on his side in the shallows, gills flaring desperately. Jessa came running with her test kit. Her hands shook as she worked. Dad, this is... Jesus. Copper sulfate levels are off the charts. Someone dumped enough algaecide to treat Lake Michigan. I called state environmental protection while standing knee-deep in foam, trying to save what fish I could. The hold music played some ironic song about crystal blue water while my fish died around me. Took photos every 10 minutes, GPS tagged everything. The foam had this slimy texture that stuck to your skin like guilt. By noon, 3,000 fish were dead. I know because I counted every goddamn one. Beth posted in the local Facebook group, Willow Creek Lake poisoned, environmental disaster unfolding. Within 5 minutes, the post was deleted. She was blocked from the group, but not before 47 people had seen it and shared it. The internet's funny like that. Try to hide something, it spreads faster. Dolores showed up at 2 p.m. with her full parade. Jerry in his golf cart, Brenda filming, Kyle trying to look official. Mr. Henley, this natural algae bloom is clearly the result of your unauthorized fishing operation. You've oversaturated the ecosystem. Natural algae doesn't smell like copper sulfate, Dolores. I'm not a chemist. Are you? She smiled that snake smile. You have 7 days to clean up this environmental hazard, or we'll sue for decreased property values. Every homeowner in Willow Creek will be party to the lawsuit. She handed me a letter from some strip mall law firm. Threatened damages of $200,000. Here's something I learned from a hazmat buddy in the Navy. Chain of custody for environmental evidence is everything. You can't just scoop water in a jar and expect it to hold up in court. You need certified containers, temperature control, witness signatures, and a documented timeline. Every sample needs 2 witnesses and a tamper-proof seal. So that's what I did. Every 2 hours. Documented like we were handling nuclear material. My trail camera had captured something interesting at 4 a.m. Pest control truck, Pest Pro 1, at the lake's edge. Driver pouring something from industrial barrels, license plate clear as day. Even better, the company logo was visible. Pest Pro Solutions, a Stansfield family company. Jerry's brother-in-law owned the poisoning truck. What a coincidence. That's when Miguel Reyes knocked on my door. Retired EPA inspector, lived 2 miles down. Heard you had a fish kill. Mind if I look? Miguel took one look at the foam patterns and whistled. This is criminal. Copper sulfate at these concentrations? We're talking $50,000 per day in federal fines. Whoever did this just violated the Clean Water Act. He explained how the chemical would bioaccumulate, poisoning the sediment for years. The remediation alone would cost more than most people's houses. You document everything? He asked. I showed him my logs. Good. You're going to need them. The HOA had installed a camera on their property line, pointed directly at my lake. Highly illegal. It was basically surveillance of private property. But even better, they were using a signal booster to transmit the footage. My neighbor, IT guy named Charlie, detected it with his equipment. They're broadcasting at 5 watts. Anything over 1 watt without an FCC license is a federal violation. I documented the signal strength, frequency, everything. Another arrow in my quiver. That evening, Kyle showed up at my gate, alone. You should have just joined when you had the chance, he said, hand resting on his citation pad like it was a weapon. Accidents happen around water. People slip, drown, even experienced swimmers. Is that a threat, Kyle? Just an observation. Lakes are dangerous. He smiled, especially poisoned ones. I held up my phone. Smile for the camera, Kyle. You're being recorded. His face went white. He stumbled back to his truck, nearly tripping over his tactical boots. But the damage was done. I had him threatening me on video. By Saturday morning, the real cost was clear. The lake was dead. 30 years of ecosystem gone. The turtles, the herons, the whole food chain destroyed. All because I wouldn't pay a bogus $500 fine. Monday morning, a certified letter arrived from Brennan & Associates, the kind of law firm that advertises on bus benches. They demanded I remediate the environmental hazard within 10 days or face a $200,000 lawsuit from all 48 HOA homeowners for decreased property values and quality of life damages. The ball's on these people. They poison my lake, then demand I clean it up. I needed real intel, so I spent Tuesday at the county planning office. Mabel was there, bless her, with coffee and a knowing smile. HOA problems getting worse? You could say that. She pulled out boxes of documents from 1978 when the development was first proposed. Dust flew everywhere, that old paper smell that takes you back to libraries before everything went digital. 3 hours in, I found gold. Not gold, platinum. The original development plan included something called an Emergency Supplemental Water Agreement. Seems the developer knew the wells wouldn't be sufficient, so they'd installed an underground pipe system connecting to my lake, well, Uncle Roy's lake back then, as backup water supply. During droughts, they could draw water. In exchange, they were supposed to maintain water quality standards. But here's the kicker. The agreement explicitly stated that the lake owner retained absolute authority over water quality and access, could revoke access for any contamination event with 72 hours notice. They'd been drawing my water for 20 years, and they'd just poisoned it. I drove straight to the courthouse and filed for an emergency injunction. Judge Harrison, old school type who actually read documents, granted it immediately. They poisoned the water they drink from? He shook his head. Can't fix stupid, but I can stop it from getting worse. By Wednesday afternoon, Willow Creek Estates had no water. The bottled water truck started arriving that evening. Dolores called an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Someone live-streamed it. God bless technology. She stood at that podium, pearls gleaming, and actually said, "Marcus Henley has weaponized his property against our community. He's deliberately withholding water to force us into submission." Brenda, filming herself as always, added, "This is basically terrorism, eco-terrorism or whatever. I'm calling the FBI." One resident stood up. "Didn't you tell us last month you were handling the lake situation?" "I don't recall saying that." "I have the minutes right here." The meeting devolved into shouting. Gerald tried to restore order with his gavel, but nobody cared. Kyle stood in the corner in his tactical vest, hand on his citation pad like it would protect him from angry homeowners who couldn't flush their toilets. Thursday, Jessa dropped a bomb at dinner. "Dad, I've been sampling the lake for 6 weeks. Not just daily, twice daily, morning and evening." She spread out her data sheets. Chemistry professor from her college had been helping analyze them. Every sample from before Friday was pristine. Then in one single sample, copper sulfate levels jumped 200 times normal. This wasn't gradual. Someone dumped massive amounts all at once, probably between 4 and 5 a.m. based on the concentration gradient. She had charts, graphs, chemical dispersion models. "My professor will testify. He's published papers on aquatic contamination." I learned something that night from Emma's mother, the environmental lawyer, who called to offer official representation. In water law, there's this concept called first in time, first in right. Basically, whoever was using the water first has senior rights. My uncle had that lake in '78. The development came in '93. Even if they had an agreement, I had senior water rights. And under federal law, deliberately contaminating a water source that serves multiple homes, that's not just a crime, that's domestic terrorism. The pressure was getting to them. Friday morning, Gerald approached me at the gas station. Tried to look casual, but his golf cart was parked outside. Dead giveaway. "Mac, let's be reasonable. This is hurting innocent families. 48 families drank poisoned water because of your board's actions. Nobody meant for... Your brother-in-law's truck was caught on camera." His face went gray. That's circumstantial." "Is it? Because I have the invoice from Pest Pro Solutions for 500 gallons of copper sulfate, paid for with an HOA credit card. Your signature's on it." He actually staggered. "How did you..." "Your treasurer live streams everything, including your last board meeting where she showed financial reports. I screenshot everything." He left without another word, his golf cart squeaking away like a dying mouse. That afternoon, 3 residents asked me privately about the water rights document. Word was spreading. The emperor had no clothes, and everyone was starting to notice. Dolores had built her little kingdom on poisoned water and forged authority. The storm was coming. I could feel it building like pressure before a thunderhead breaks. Saturday morning, my uncle's lawyer called. Harry Watkins, 78 years old, still sharp as a Japanese knife. "Mac, you sitting down? I found something in Roy's papers you need to see." I drove to his office, same one he'd had since 1971, wood paneling and all. He had a yellow document on his desk, covered in plastic like evidence, which it was. "This is from 1952. Your uncle bought that land from the Hensley family, but there was a deed restriction nobody paid attention to." He adjusted his glasses. "The owner of that lake parcel has absolute and perpetual authority over all water rights, access, and quality standards. Can charge reasonable fees for access. And here's the beautiful part. It says this authority survives and supersedes any subsequent agreements. English, Harry. You own the water, all of it, every drop. The HOA's been stealing from you for 20 years. That handshake deal your uncle made? Legally meaningless. This deed restriction trumps everything." My hands actually shook. "They've been collecting money for lake maintenance." "How much?" "According to their own financial reports, about 20 grand a year." Harry smiled like a shark. "Times 20 years, that's $400,000 they collected for maintaining your water, that they just poisoned." We spent 3 hours going through the implications. The HOA had no legal standing, never did. Every fine, every threat, every enforcement action, All of it was ultra-vires, beyond their authority. They'd been operating outside the law for 2 decades. But it got better, or worse, depending on your perspective. Beth had been doing her librarian thing, digging through digital records. The HOA's insurance explicitly excluded environmental contamination caused by board members, meaning if board members poisoned the water, they were personally liable. No insurance coverage. Their houses, she said, showing me property records. Dolores has $1 million place. Jerry's is worth $800,000. They're all collateral for various loans. So if they're personally liable for environmental cleanup, they lose everything. Then the FBI called. Special Agent Martinez, Financial Crimes Division. Mr. Henley, we're investigating potential embezzlement from Willow Creek Estates HOA. We understand you have relevant documents? Turns out, when you collect $400,000 for maintaining a lake you don't own and don't maintain, that's wire fraud, federal crime. And when that money goes to your cousin's consulting firm that doesn't exist, that's RICO territory. Dolores's cousin's company, Whitmore Water Management Consulting, had received every penny of those lake maintenance fees. The company's address, Dolores's pool house, the company's only employee, Dolores's son, who lived in California and had never been to Tennessee. The treasurer, Brenda, had actually documented all of this in her live streams. Today, we're approving the quarterly payment to our water consultant, she'd chirped, holding up checks, routing numbers visible. The internet never forgets. By Sunday, 3 more things had surfaced. First, Kyle had a record. Assault charges from a bar fight pleaded down. Impersonating an officer in Alabama. Fired from security guard jobs for excessive force. The HOA knew and hired him anyway. Negligent retention. Second, the pest control company had no license for aquatic applications. Applying copper sulfate required special certification they didn't have. That's criminal negligence. Third, and this was the cherry on top, Dolores had taken out a home equity loan using future HOA income from lake access fees as collateral. She'd essentially mortgaged her house against money she was stealing from me. Monday morning, I called a meeting with my team. Miguel the inspector, Emma's mom the lawyer, Harry the old fox who'd found the deed, and surprisingly, 3 HOA residents who'd flipped to my side. They don't know we know all this, I said. They think it's just about the poisoning. Emma's mom smiled. When do we tell them? At the county commissioners' meeting Thursday. It's a public forum. Press will be there. Half the town already knows something's happening because of the water trucks. Miguel laughed. They're about to find out what happens when you poison the well you drink from, literally and financially. The HOA board had just committed suicide, and they didn't even know they were dead yet. My kitchen table looked like a war room. Maps, documents, laptops, water samples, and enough coffee to fuel a battleship. We had 72 hours until the county commissioners' meeting, and every second counted. Emma's mom, Patricia Reeves, call her Pat, laid out the legal strategy. We hit them from 5 angles simultaneously: environmental crimes, federal water law violations, embezzlement, RICO, and personal liability. They won't know which way to run. Miguel had created a contamination map showing how the copper sulfate would spread through the water table. This affects more than just your lake, Mac. 3 wells downstream are at risk. That makes it interstate commerce, federal jurisdiction. The forensic accountant Beth found, a guy named Michael who'd helped bust 3 corrupt city councils, worked his calculator like a concert pianist. $400,000 in embezzled funds, but with RICO, we can claim treble damages. That's $1.2 million, plus remediation costs of $600,000 minimum, plus punitive damages. How much total? North of $2 million. Their insurance won't cover intentional acts. They're personally on the hook. My neighbor Charlie, the IT guy, had been monitoring their communications. All legal. They were using unsecured Wi-Fi for HOA business. Dolores is panicking. She's emailing lawyers at midnight. Jerry's trying to transfer assets to his wife's name. That's fraudulent conveyance, by the way. We divided up tasks like a military operation. Pat would file the federal complaints Monday. The Clean Water Act violation alone carried $50,000 per day in fines. Since Friday, that was already $200,000 and climbing. The EPA had priority. Once they moved, local authorities had to step aside. Miguel worked with state environmental protection. They needed certified labs to verify our samples. Chain of custody had to be perfect. I've got 3 independent labs confirming the same results. No judge can ignore this. Jessa and her professor created a presentation that would make Al Gore weep. Graphs showing the pristine baseline, the massive spike, the death toll. Pictures of dead fish, poisoned sediment, foam like toxic snow. They added a timeline showing every HOA threat leading up to the poisoning. Cause and effect, clear as crystal. Beth had been building a media package. Press release, fact sheet, supporting documents. Every newspaper in 3 counties gets this Wednesday night. TV stations too. We embargo it until Thursday morning. Maximum impact. But the real genius came from the 3 HOA residents who'd joined our side. They'd been collecting stories for years. Tom Garrett, retired Marine, had been fined $500 for flying an American flag that was too large. Susan Michael, no relation to Brenda, got sued for having the wrong species of grass. Literally, they claimed her Bermuda grass was 5% rye, demanded she resod her entire yard. The Washingtons, elderly black couple, had been cited 17 times for violations nobody else got written up for. Discriminatory enforcement, Pat called it. That's a Fair Housing Act violation. We had 43 residents ready to testify. Their combined stories painted a picture of systematic harassment, discrimination, and extortion spanning 2 decades. Wednesday afternoon, we did a practice run. Everyone knew their part. Pat would present the legal framework, Miguel would explain the environmental damage, Michael would detail the financial crimes. I'd deliver the emotional punch, a veteran who just wanted to fish in his inherited lake. Remember, Pat said, we're not asking for permission. We're informing them of what's already happening. FBI's already investigating, EPA's already moving. This is courtesy notice before their world explodes. That evening, something unexpected happened. Brenda Michael Matthews showed up at my door, alone, no camera. I want immunity, she said without preamble. I have everything. Every email, every secret meeting, recordings of Dolores planning this. I've been documenting for insurance, in case things went bad. Why should we trust you? She pulled out her phone, played a recording. Dolores's voice. I don't care if we have to poison every fish in that lake. He needs to learn his place. Poor people always think they can fight money. Jerry, call your brother-in-law. Kyle, you know what to do if he keeps pushing. I've got 17 hours of recordings. Board meetings where they discussed permanently solving the Henley problem. Jerry joking about putting Mac 6 feet under next to his fish. Kyle describing how he'd make it look like an accident. Pat took over. Full immunity for testimony and evidence. You were just the treasurer following orders. Deal? Brenda nodded. They're planning something for tomorrow. Dolores has been calling someone named Vic. Says he handles permanent problems. You need to be careful. I looked at my team. Thursday was going to be biblical. We had the evidence, the law, and now an inside witness. The HOA board had no idea what was coming. They thought they were attending a routine county meeting. Instead, they were walking into their own funeral. Wednesday night, Dolores made her desperate play. Harry called me at 10 p.m. Mac, you need to see this. Someone just filed a document at the courthouse claiming your uncle sold water rights to the HOA in 2001. That's impossible. He was deployed in Afghanistan then. I know, but they've got a notarized signature and a witness. Dolores's brother from Arkansas swears he was there. I drove to Harry's office. The document looked real enough. Aged paper, official seals, the works. But Dolores had made one fatal mistake. The notary stamp was dated March 15, 2001. I pulled out my phone, found the Defense Department archive. Uncle Roy was promoted to Master Sergeant on March 15, 2001, in Kandahar, with photographic proof. She forged military documents, Harry whistled. That's federal. That's prison. But Dolores wasn't done. At 2 a.m., my dock caught fire. I woke to orange light dancing on my bedroom walls. Ran outside to find the dock Uncle Roy built engulfed in flames. The fire department arrived quick, but half the structure was gone. Charred posts stuck up like blackened fingers. Fire Inspector Todd Brennan was there at dawn. Accelerant pour patterns everywhere. Amateur work, though. They used regular gasoline. Left footprints in the mud. He held up an evidence bag. Size 11 tactical boots. How many people around here wear those? Kyle. Always Kyle with his fake soldier costume. But here's where it got interesting. My trail camera had survived, hidden in the metal box I'd installed after the garbage incident. Crystal clear footage. Kyle Dobbs pouring gas at 1:47 a.m. But behind him in the truck, 2 more figures. Jerry, and someone I didn't recognize. Big guy, prison tattoos visible on his neck. That's Victorino, Todd said quietly. Arson for hire. Just got out of federal prison 6 months ago. If Dolores hired him, that's conspiracy to commit federal crimes. They'd crossed a line even they couldn't come back from. Thursday morning, the state police called. Mr. Henley, we've arrested Kyle Dobbs. He tested positive for gasoline residue. His boots match the prints. He's already trying to make a deal. Says the board made him do it. By noon, Jerry was doing damage control. He approached my neighbor Tom, the Marine. "Tell Henley we'll pay him off. 100,000 cash. All he has to do is drop everything." Tom recorded the whole conversation. "That's bribery, Jerry. You really want to add that to the list? It's negotiation. It's a federal crime when you're trying to stop a criminal investigation." The smell of desperation was thicker than the smoke from my burned dock. Meanwhile, Dolores was spinning hard. She'd hired a PR firm to flood social media with claims that I was a radical environmentalist trying to destroy a wholesome community. They posted photos of sad children who couldn't swim in the community pool because of the water shortage. Never mentioned the pool had its own separate water supply. But then Brenda did something beautiful. She went live on Instagram. "Hey boss babes. So, I need to clear my conscience. That whole poisoned lake thing, I have videos of our board meetings planning it. Here's Dolores saying we need to, quote, eliminate the Henley problem before property values drop. And here's Jerry calling his brother-in-law about the copper sulfate." She streamed for 47 minutes. Every dirty secret, the embezzlement, the discrimination, the planned violence. 20,000 viewers watched Dolores' empire crumble in real time. Dolores tried one last move. She filed an emergency motion claiming I was causing a public health crisis by denying water access. Her new lawyer, the fourth one this week, argued before Judge Harrison that public necessity overruled property rights. Harrison wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Whitmore, you're asking me to force Mr. Henley to provide water that your clients poisoned after they threatened him? After they committed arson?" "Alleged arson, Your Honor. I've seen the footage. Your enforcement officer is literally on camera with a gas can. Motion denied. And Mrs. Whitmore? You might want to retain criminal counsel." The news trucks were already setting up at the county courthouse. 3 channels, 2 newspapers, and somehow a documentary crew from Netflix investigating HOA corruption. The meeting was at 6 p.m. Dolores had one final card to play, and I knew she'd play it. She always did when cornered. She'd cry, claim she was a victim, say she was just trying to protect property values and families. Too bad I had 17 hours of her planning crimes. Too bad the FBI was already in the building. Too bad her house of cards was about to collapse on live television. The reckoning was here. Thursday morning started with a bang, literally. Someone had slashed all 4 tires on my truck and spray-painted "Last Warning" across the windshield. But they'd done it in view of the bank's ATM camera across the street. Vic Torino's face, clear as day. The idiot had forgotten about surveillance cameras. State police picked him up at noon. He flipped faster than a pancake. "Dolores Whitmore paid me $5,000 to scare you. Said if that didn't work, she'd pay 20 to make you disappear." He'd recorded the conversation. Career criminals don't trust anyone, especially desperate HOA presidents. By 2 p.m., Dolores was in full meltdown mode. She'd called an emergency board meeting at the clubhouse. Someone live-streamed it again. God bless the digital age. "This is a conspiracy," she screamed, mascara running. "Marcus Henley has turned this community against us. He's probably working with developers to tank our property values so they can buy us out cheap." Gerald tried to calm her down. "Dolores, we need to think about legal representation." "Shut up, Jerry. Your stupid brother-in-law caused this mess. You said the copper sulfate would just make the lake ugly, not kill everything." The room went silent. 40 homeowners stared. Someone whispered, "Did she just confess?" She had, on live stream, to 400 viewers. Kyle had already been released on bail, and he made his last stupid decision. He confronted me at the gas station at 3 p.m., not threatening this time, begging. "Please, Mac, I've got kids. I can't go to prison. I was just following orders." "Following orders? Where have I heard that before?" "I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Dolores said if I didn't help, she'd evict my family. We're behind on HOA dues. She owns the rental company that owns our house." Another piece of the puzzle. Dolores didn't just run the HOA, she had financial leverage over half the board. "Get a lawyer, Kyle. Tell them everything. Maybe you'll just get probation." He broke down crying right there by the gas pumps, this tough guy in his tactical vest, sobbing like a child. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to feel important. Almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The document dump happened at 4 p.m. Brenda, working with the FBI, released 5 years of HOA emails to the press. Every reporter in 3 counties got the same package simultaneously. The headlines wrote themselves: HOA president ordered poisoning of lake. Board embezzled $400K in fake fees. Discrimination and racketeering in suburban HOA. But the best part? Brenda had recordings of Dolores on the phone with her cousin, the sheriff. "I need Mac Henley arrested. I don't care what for. Plant something if you have to." The sheriff, trying to save his own skin, had immediately reported this to the FBI. He'd been wearing a wire for the last 3 days. Every conversation with Dolores was recorded. She'd tried to bribe him, threaten him, even suggested he could accidentally shoot me during a routine stop. At 5 p.m., 1 hour before the meeting, FBI Special Agent Martinez called. "Mr. Henley, we're arresting Dolores Whitmore on federal charges. Thought you should know. Before the meeting? During. We want it public. Send a message to every corrupt HOA in America." The courthouse was packed by 5:30. Standing room only, 3 news trucks outside, reporters doing live shots. Someone had made protest signs. HOAs are the real terrorists, and Dolores poisoned our kids. Inside, the county commissioners sat at their elevated bench looking uncomfortable. They knew this wasn't going to be a normal meeting. The FBI agents in the back probably gave it away. Dolores walked in at 5:45 with her new lawyer, some slick suit from Nashville. She still wore her pearls, but her hands shook. Jerry followed, head down. No golf cart this time. Kyle wasn't there. His lawyer had advised him to avoid public appearances. The crowd was hostile. Murmurs, pointed fingers. Someone hissed "murderer" when Dolores passed. She tried to hold her head high, but everyone could see the fear. Commissioner Reynolds called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the water situation at Willow Creek Estates and the adjacent Henley property. Mr. Henley, you have the floor." I stood up, looked at Dolores, then turned to the crowd. 3 weeks ago, the HOA board poisoned my lake to stop me from fishing. What they didn't know was that their water comes from my lake. What they really didn't know was that I own that water, all of it. And what they definitely didn't know was that every crime they committed was being documented. The room erupted. This was it. The moment of truth. Time to destroy an empire built on poison and lies. I walked to the podium with my evidence box. 300 people watched. The commissioners leaned forward. Dolores's lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, "Let me show you what happened to my lake." I clicked the remote. The screen showed pristine water, fish jumping, kids laughing on the dock. Then the after photos. Dead fish carpeting the surface, foam like toxic snow. The crowd gasped. 3,000 fish died, 30 years of ecosystem destroyed. Why? Because I wouldn't pay a fake fine to an HOA that has no authority over my property. Patricia Reeves took over, all 5 feet 2 inches of legal fury. The Henley property predates the HOA by 15 years. The 1952 deed grants absolute water authority to the owner. Every cent collected for lake maintenance was theft. Every fine was extortion. Every threat was criminal. She clicked through documents on the screen. The forged agreement with Uncle Roy's signature. Military records proving he was in Afghanistan. Forging military documents is a federal crime. 5 years minimum sentence. Miguel presented the environmental damage. Copper sulfate at 200 times safe levels. This wasn't vandalism. This was attempted murder of an ecosystem. The Clean Water Act makes this a federal felony. $50,000 per day in fines. Chen, the accountant, showed the financial crimes. $400,000 embezzled. RICO statutes apply. Treble damages plus penalties. The board members are personally liable for $2.4 million. Dolores stood up. "This is lies, all lies. I've protected this community for 20 years. Protected? I pulled out my phone, connected it to the sound system, pressed play. Dolores's voice filled the room. "I don't care if we have to poison every fish in that lake. He needs to learn his place. Poor people always think they can fight money." Then Jerry, "My brother-in-law will handle it. Copper sulfate. Kill everything. Make the lake worthless." Then Kyle, "If he keeps pushing, I know how to make it look like an accident. Drowning happens all the time." The crowd exploded. Someone threw a water bottle. "You poisoned our children!" a mother screamed. Commissioner Reynolds banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" That's when Agent Martinez walked to the front, FBI badge gleaming. "Dolores Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit environmental crimes, racketeering, attempted bribery of a federal official, and conspiracy to commit murder." "Murder?" Dolores shrieked. "You hired Vic Torino to permanently solve Mr. Henley. We have the recording." The handcuffs clicked. The crowd went silent, then erupted in applause. Someone started chanting, "Lock her up!" Others joined. Jerry tried to run, didn't make it to the door before 2 more agents grabbed him. "Gerald Stansfield, you're under arrest for environmental crimes and conspiracy." Kyle had already been arrested, but they announced it anyway. "Kyle Dobbs, arrested this morning for arson, making terroristic threats, and impersonating a law enforcement officer." Brenda stood up. "I've been granted immunity in exchange for testimony. I have 17 hours of recordings of board meetings where they planned these crimes." She hit play on her phone. The speakers carried Dolores saying, "If Mac Henley has an accident, we could buy his property cheap. Kyle, you still have those friends from prison?" The commissioners didn't need to hear more. Reynolds stood. "By unanimous vote, Willow Creek Estates HOA is immediately dissolved pending criminal investigation. All assets are frozen. Mr. Henley maintains sole authority over water access. Pat delivered the killing blow. We're also filing civil suits, every homeowner who was illegally fined or discriminated against. The Washingtons, cited 17 times for violations no one else got. The Garretts, fined for their American flag. 43 families with valid claims. This board will be paying damages for the rest of their lives. Dolores, in handcuffs, made one last desperate play. "You're destroying our community. These families need water." I walked up to her, close enough to smell that toxic perfume one last time. The crowd went quiet. "Dolores, you poisoned the water. You threatened my family. You tried to have me killed. But here's the difference between us. I'm not you. These families will have clean water. Soon as you pay for remediation, every penny of that $2.4 million goes to fixing what you destroyed. And if that means selling your house, your car, and those pearls, so be it." I turned to the crowd. "For everyone else, I'm not your enemy. Never was. Once the lake's clean, every family gets water access. Free, no fees, no permits, no HOA telling you what color your mailbox should be." The room exploded in cheers. People crying, hugging, shouting, "Thank you." As they led Dolores out, she turned back. Mascara streaming, pearls crooked, empire destroyed. "You ruined everything." "No, Dolores, you poisoned your own well. I just made you drink from it." The mic drop heard round the suburbs. The news cameras caught it all. The death of a tyrant, live at 6. 6 months later, I watched a 10-year-old girl catch her first base in my lake. Same spot where I'd found 3,000 dead fish. Same water Dolores had poisoned. But now it ran crystal clear, testing cleaner than most bottled water. The girl's squeal of delight when that 2-pounder jumped? That's what victory sounds like. The remediation cost $647,000. Every penny came from forced sales. Dolores's $1 million house went first, bought by a young black family she'd once tried to keep out. Jerry's golf cart collection fetched $80,000 at auction. Kyle's truck, guns, and tactical gear covered the rest. Poetic justice tastes sweeter than Tennessee honey. Dolores got 8 years. 5 federal, 3 state, consecutive. The judge called her a cautionary tale of suburban tyranny. The photo of her in orange jumpsuit, no pearls, crying as they led her away, it became a meme. HOA Karen Goes to Prison has 40 million views on TikTok. Jerry's doing 18 months, lost everything. His brother-in-law's pest company was bankrupted by EPA fines. Last update from Ohio, Jerry's bagging groceries, living in his daughter's basement. He wrote me once, "I'm sorry, power made me forget I was human." Didn't write back. Some bridges stay burned. Kyle surprised everyone. Prison humbled him. He writes youth groups now about fake toughness versus real strength. Sends $50 monthly to lake conservation from his prison job, making 12 cents an hour. That's $400 a month at prison wages. Redemption comes in strange packages. But here's the beautiful part, the community transformation. Without HOA harassment, neighbors became friends. The Washingtons, who'd been cited 17 times, now host Sunday dinners for 20 families. Those kids I taught to fish, they started an environmental club at school. One of them, Charlie Jr., just got into MIT for environmental engineering. We created the Roy Henley Memorial Lake Preserve, free fishing for everyone, forever. The scholarship fund has sent 12 kids to college. Jessa runs it while finishing her environmental law degree. Her thesis? How poisoned water became prosecutorial precedent. Harvard wants her for graduate school. The documentary Poisoned Paradise swept the Emmys. When they played Dolores saying, "Poor people always think they can fight money," followed by her arrest, the audience gave a standing ovation. We donated our appearance fees to water protection charities. Max law passed in 31 states now. HOAs can't touch water sources. Period. Financial transparency mandatory. Criminal penalties for board corruption. I testified before Congress. Never thought this Navy engineer would be changing federal law. Lake Day draws 500 people now. Free BBQ, fishing lessons, conservation education. Last July, a little girl caught a 7-pound bass and released it, saying, "Grow bigger for next time." She learned that from me. Full circle. The best moment? Last month, Miguel found something. The lake's ecosystem hadn't just recovered, it improved. The cleanup removed 40 years of agricultural runoff. We now have species that haven't been seen since the 1960s. Blue herons nest here. River otters returned. A bald eagle visits every morning. Beth's book, When They Poisoned the Well, hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Netflix wants to make it a series. She donated half the advance to funding free legal services for HOA victims. We get 20 emails a day from people fighting their own HOAs. We help everyone, Some nights I sit on my rebuilt dock, insurance paid for cedar this time, not pine, and fish under the stars. The water laps quiet. Fireflies dance. No chemical smell, no foam, no death. Just peace. I think about Uncle Roy, how his stubbornness saved this place, how his nephew's stubbornness saved it again, how sometimes the little guy wins big. Dolores has 7 more years to think about what she did. The federal prison in Alabama doesn't have air conditioning. Every summer day must feel like drowning in heat. Karma's funny like that. Last week, that 10-year-old who caught her first base, she asked if she could call me Grandpa Mac. I said yes, watched her release that fish gentle as a prayer. The future's in good hands. This is Mac Henley, signing off from a lake that refused to die. Did your HOA try to destroy you too? Share your story below. You're not alone. And hey, if you love seeing everyday heroes destroy entitled tyrants, subscribe to Karen Stories. Next week, how a disabled veteran exposed his HOA's fake charity that stole $2 million from wounded warriors. Remember, they're only powerful until you prove they're not.